If you've ever heard someone say it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country, well, you've heard the line that Wilfred Owen spent his life and then his death trying to destroy. His poem Dulce et Decorum Est, written in the trenches of World War One, doesn't glorify war. It exposes war. It exposes the filth and the fear and futility. And this is not a poem about heroes. It's a poem about what happens when human beings are broken by the machinery of modern warfare, and why patriotism can become a poison when it forgets the cost. I'm Matt Hasquin. I'm a high school history and civics teacher. I like to talk about things that we should just know by being alive, basically. And I also just like to talk about things that are academically important, and especially for some of my students who happen to watch these. But I want to talk about the poem by Wilfred Owen. So, Wilfred Owen was a British soldier and a poet who fought on the Western Front during World War One. And by 1917, he had seen just the unthinkable. He'd seen men drowning in mud, losing their limbs to shells, watching their friends just die in silence. And he called himself a poet for the pity of war. And he didn't write about victory or valor. He wrote about exhaustion and gas attacks and the slow death of faith in a world that had just mechanized slaughter. Dulce et Decorum Est, which was written in 1917 and then published after his death, became his most famous work. The poem, it begins not with marching soldiers, but it begins with ghosts, bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. These are not shining young men of the recruiting posters, or they're broken, they're trudging, they're half dead. And then in a flash, everything changes. Gas, gas, quick boys. And then Owen captures the real panic of a gas attack, the frantic fumbling for masks, and then the one man who doesn't get his mask on in time, and the unbearable sight of him dying as the chlorine gas fills his lungs. He plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. The imagery it's of nightmares. I mean, it's not poetic beauty, but instead it's raw, and it's just suffocating horror. Owen even breaks the rhythm of his own lines to mimic the chaos of the attack. Now, in the poem's final lines, Owens turns directly to the reader and to those who tell young men that dying for their country is noble. He writes, "My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori." That Latin phrase, it comes from the Roman poet Horace. It means it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. And Owens calls it the old lie. He's not condemning love of country. He's just condemning how patriotism is used to disguise the horror of war. Now, Dulce et Decorum Est is the moment when poetry itself begins changing. I mean, before Owen, war poems were filled with honor and sacrifice, but after Owen, they were filled with irony and disillusionment and truth. This particular poem's central themes are rather, just brutally simple, and he stresses the reality of war. Like, the gas attack isn't a metaphor. It's what modern warfare really looked like. And then he touches on the loss of innocence. You have soldiers who enter the war as idealists, and then they leave the war as just these hollowed out shells. Then you have the betrayal of youth. Owen's anger isn't at the soldiers. It's at the adults who sent the youth there. Then you have the death of glory, because war no longer belongs to poets and heroes. It just belongs to the suffering and the mud. Owen's words, they carry their weight because, one, he lived them. He wrote Dulce et Decorum Est while recovering from shell shock in a military hospital. And while he was there, he met Siegfried Sassoon, another soldier poet who encouraged him to speak the truth about the war. Owen returned to the front in 1918 and was killed in action just 1 week before the armistice. His mother received the telegram announcing his death on November 11th, 1918, the day the war ended. He was 25. His poem became a symbol of a generation betrayed by its leaders, the lost generation. It remains one of the clearest voices of protest against the myth of noble war. And every time it's taught or read or recited, it demands that we see the human face of conflict and that we remember the price of phrases like honor or glory. The reason why it matters, we're nearing Veterans Day here in the U.S. Dulce et Decorum Est. It still matters because we still tell the same lies, that war is clean, that death is noble, and that suffering can just be justified, by a flag. Owen's poem doesn't just describe horror, it insists that we witness it. It challenges us to question every narrative that romanticizes destruction. It reminds us that the true cost of war, isn't paid for in victory parades. Instead, it's paid for in blood and the breath, and then ultimately the silence of the men and women who fight in it. And that's Dulce et Decorum Est. It's Wilfred Owen's unflinching vision of the Great War. It's a poem that stripped the glory from battle and then it replaced it with truth. It's a reminder that patriotism without compassion is just propaganda, and that poetry, at its best, can still save us from believing the old lie. Thanks for watching.